What if I told you that Jesus gave a warning so specific, so urgent, that he told his followers exactly what to do when they saw it? Not a vague spiritual metaphor, not a symbol open to 100 different interpretations, a direct, clear, unmistakable instruction. He said, "Stay where you are, don't go back for your coat, don't hesitate, just go." And the sign that triggers that warning may be closer than any of us want to admit. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't just history. It's a message that was written 2,000 years ago for this exact moment. In the next few minutes, we're going to walk together through one of the most stunning and overlooked prophecies Jesus ever gave. And we're going to look at his exact words. We're going to understand what he was really saying. And by the time we reach the end, you won't just know this prophecy intellectually, you'll feel it in your bones, in your faith, in the way you see the world around you. This isn't speculation. This isn't fear-mongering. This is the living word of God, speaking directly into the noise and confusion of our time. Let me take you back to a specific afternoon, a hillside, the city of Jerusalem spread out below, golden in the late sun. Jesus and his disciples had just left the temple, and as they walked, one of the disciples said something that almost sounds like small talk. He pointed to the massive stones of the temple complex and said, essentially, "Look at this place. Isn't it magnificent?" And Jesus stopped, and he said something that silenced them all. "Do you see all these things? Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." Matthew 24:2. The disciples didn't say a word until they reached the Mount of Olives. And then, quietly, privately, they came to him with a question that has echoed through every generation since. "Tell us, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Matthew 24:3. And Jesus sat down with them on that hillside and began to speak. What he said next is known as the Olivet Discourse. And buried inside it is one of the most specific, most urgent, most personal warnings he ever gave. Before we get to that warning, I need you to understand something about how Jesus taught. He didn't speak in abstractions. He wasn't a distant philosophical teacher who gave lectures from a podium. He spoke to people with real fears and real lives. He spoke in images they could see, in stories they could feel, in words that stayed with you long after the conversation ended. So when he gave this warning, he wasn't speaking to theologians. He was speaking to fishermen, to a tax collector, to people who had families, who had homes, who had everything to lose. He was speaking to people exactly like you and me. And what he said next changes everything. "So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak." Matthew 24:15 and 18. Stay home. Drop everything. Go. Now I want to pause here for a moment, because this passage has layers, and most people only ever see the surface. On one level, Jesus was speaking about a very specific historical event, the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. The Roman general Titus surrounded the city. The temple was torn apart stone by stone, exactly as Jesus predicted. And according to early church historian Eusebius, the Christians in Jerusalem remembered this warning. When they saw the signs, they fled to a city called Pella across the Jordan, and they survived. Every single word Jesus spoke came true, with devastating, precise accuracy. But here's what most people miss. Jesus wasn't only talking about 70 AD. The disciples asked him two questions that afternoon. When will the temple be destroyed? And what will be the sign of the end of the age? Jesus answered both at the same time, woven together like two threads in the same cloth, because what happened in Jerusalem in 70 AD was a preview, a foreshadowing, a pattern that would repeat on a global scale. The early destruction was local. The final fulfillment is universal. And what I'm about to share with you will completely change the way you see everything that's happening in the world right now. Let's talk about the phrase Jesus used. The abomination that causes desolation. He pointed back to the prophet Daniel. Daniel used this phrase 3 times, and each time it described something sacred being desecrated, something holy being invaded, a line being crossed that was never meant to be crossed. In Daniel's time, a Greek ruler named Antiochus Epiphanes marched into the temple in Jerusalem and set up an altar to Zeus. He sacrificed a pig on the holy altar. He mocked everything the Jewish people held sacred. That was the first abomination. Then came 70 AD. Rome didn't just destroy the temple. Roman soldiers carried their eagle standards, their idols, into the sacred courts. They offered sacrifices to their gods on the ruins of God's house. That was the second. But Daniel's prophecy pointed to a third, a final one, and Jesus confirmed it. Something is coming that will make every previous desecration look like a shadow of the real thing. Now, I'm not here to give you a political commentary. I'm not here to point fingers at world leaders or build a conspiracy theory. That's not what this is. What I want you to see is the pattern. Every time this sign has appeared throughout history, it has been preceded by the same things: increasing deception, wars, and rumors of wars. Natural disasters, the persecution of believers, a growing coldness in human hearts, a spiritual confusion so thick that even sincere people can barely find their footing. Sound familiar? Jesus said in Matthew 24:24, "For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect." Even the elect. He wasn't warning the spiritually careless. He was warning the most devoted, the most sincere, the most committed followers of God. Because the deception that's coming isn't going to look like deception. It's going to look like truth. It's going to feel like revelation. It's going to sound like exactly what your heart has been longing to hear. Pause. That's what makes it so dangerous. Let me tell you something about the housetop instruction that most people walk right past. In first century Israel, the rooftop was a living space. People would go up to pray in the evening, to watch the sunset, to have conversations away from the noise of the street below. It was a place of peace, of reflection, of intimacy with God. And Jesus said, when you see this sign, don't even go down from the roof to get your things from inside the house. He wasn't just giving evacuation instructions. He was saying, in that moment, the most dangerous thing you can do is go backward. Don't go back to what was comfortable. Don't go back to what was familiar. Don't let attachment to the things of this world slow you down when the moment demands everything. There's something in that instruction that goes beyond geography. It's a word for our souls. How many of us are spiritually paralyzed right now because we keep going back to old habits, back to old doubts, back to the version of ourselves that felt safer, even if it wasn't free? Jesus said, don't go back for your cloak, whatever it is you're clinging to that's keeping you from moving forward in your faith. This might be the moment to leave it behind. And what I'm about to share with you now is the part of this passage that I find the most quietly devastating. Jesus said in Matthew 24:19-20, "How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath." Pray that your flight will not take place in winter. Do you understand what he's saying there? He's saying, I know this is coming. I know you can't stop it, but you can pray about the timing. You can bring even this to God, even the details, even the when. He wasn't giving them a reason to despair. He was giving them an invitation to prayer. Even in the middle of a prophecy about tribulation and desolation, Jesus was saying, your prayers matter. Your cries to God in the night matter. The conversation between your soul and your Father matters. He didn't say, this is coming and there's nothing you can do. He said, pray. Long pause. That word lands differently when you sit with it. Now, I want to shift something here because I sense that some of you are carrying a weight right now that has nothing to do with end-time prophecy. Some of you are in your own private tribulation. Maybe it's a marriage that feels like it's crumbling. Maybe it's a health diagnosis that changed everything overnight. Maybe it's a loneliness so deep that even in a room full of people, you feel completely invisible. Maybe it's a faith that used to feel certain and now feels like you're grasping at smoke. And you came to this video because something in the title spoke to something in you that you can't quite name. I want you to hear this. Jesus gave this warning not to terrify his followers. He gave it because he loved them, because he wanted them to recognize the moment when it came, because he wanted them to be ready, not paralyzed, not in denial, ready. And the same is true for you right now in whatever your personal tribulation looks like. He's not watching from a distance. He's not indifferent to what you're carrying. He saw this moment in your life before you were born, and he left instructions. He left comfort. He left himself. Let me read you something that Jesus said just a few verses after this warning, because the people who only quote the scary part of Matthew 24 are missing the most important line in the whole passage. For the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. Matthew 24:22. For the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. He's in control of the timeline. Even in the darkest chapter of human history, God is not absent. He is not overwhelmed. He is not scrambling. He knows exactly how long this lasts. And he has already decided, for the sake of his people, that it will not go on one day longer than necessary. That's not a small thing. That's everything. The God who created time is also the God who limits suffering within time. There's a historical detail about the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD that I think about often. When Titus and his armies surrounded the city, they expected a quick siege. What they found instead was a city already tearing itself apart from within. Different Jewish factions were fighting each other inside the walls at the same time as the Roman army was pressing from outside. The people who should have been protecting each other were destroying each other, and the Christians, the ones who remembered the warning of Jesus, had already left. They weren't heroes. They weren't smarter than everyone else. They simply remembered what he said, and when the moment came, they trusted his word more than their own instinct to stay, to fight, to cling to what was familiar. They survived because they listened. Pause. There is something in that story that I can't shake. In a world that is increasingly loud, increasingly urgent, increasingly demanding your attention and your allegiance, the most countercultural thing a believer can do is go quiet, go still, and listen to the voice that has never been wrong. And what I'm about to tell you is something that I think is the deepest layer of this entire passage. Jesus said in Matthew 24:27, "For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." His return won't be a rumor. It won't be hidden in a corner. It won't require a special insider interpretation or a secret decoder. When he comes, everyone will know. No announcement will be needed, no debate, no doubt. It will be like lightning. And between now and that moment, Jesus gave his people one primary assignment: not to calculate dates, not to build bunkers, not to argue about timelines. He said in Matthew 24:42, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." Keep watch. In the original Greek, that word is Gregorio. It means to stay awake, to be alert, to be spiritually conscious and present, not numbed or distracted or asleep. It's the same word used in Gethsemane when Jesus came back from prayer and found his disciples sleeping. And he said, with a grief in his voice that I find almost unbearable, "Could you not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Could you not stay awake with me?" We live in the age of distraction. Everything around us is designed to capture our attention and hold it just long enough to sell us something, scare us about something, or make us forget what actually matters. And in the middle of all of that noise, Jesus says, watch. Not with anxiety, not with obsession, but with the calm, clear-eyed awareness of someone who knows what's coming and knows who holds it all. The believer who is watching isn't the one refreshing news feeds in a panic. The believer who is watching is the one who prays with intention, who reads the word with expectation, who loves the people around them with urgency, because they understand that time is not unlimited. That's what watching looks like. And you, what rises in you when you sit with all of this? Is it fear? Is it a strange kind of peace? Is it a question you've been carrying for a long time that finally feels like it has somewhere to land? Write it in the comments. Honestly, I would love to read what's in your heart right now, because this isn't a lecture. It's a conversation, and your faith, your struggle, your story, it matters here. I want to close with something that I think is the most important thing I could possibly say. Jesus gave this warning from a hillside, looking out over a city he loved, a city he would weep over just days later, a city that would reject him and yet whose destruction he mourned before it ever happened. He gave this warning not because he wanted his followers to live in fear. He gave it because he wanted them to live. And he gives it to us today for the same reason. Every sign he described, the deception, the conflicts, the natural disasters, the growing coldness of human hearts, the persecution of believers, the preaching of the gospel to every corner of the earth, every single one of these things was meant to serve as a landmark, not a reason for despair. A landmark, a way of saying, I told you this was coming. And if I told you this was coming and it came, then trust me about what comes after. Because what comes after is the part that changes everything. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Matthew 24:30. Power and great glory, not weakness, not defeat, not the quiet carpenter walking dusty roads, misunderstood and eventually crucified. Power and great glory, the same Jesus who wept at a grave. The same Jesus who held children and healed lepers and ate with people everyone else had given up on. The same Jesus who, in his darkest hour, prayed for the people who were killing him, that Jesus is coming back, and he is coming back as King. Long pause. I don't know what that stirs in you, but I know what it stirs in me. It makes every hard day feel lighter, every unanswered prayer feel less like silence and more like patience. Every moment of suffering feel less like abandonment and more like a chapter in a story that hasn't finished yet. He told us to stay awake, to watch, to not go back for our cloaks. He told us, in the middle of everything that's coming, that he has already shortened the days for our sake. He told us that even in the most terrifying moments of human history, the right response is to pray. And then he made us a promise that has held across 2,000 years of war and plague and persecution and doubt. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Matthew 28:20, to the very end of the age. Not until things get hard. Not until you stop believing. Not until the calendar runs out, to the very end. He is with you today. In the confusion, he is with you. In the grief, he is with you. In the waiting, he is with you. In the moments when your faith feels like a candle barely staying lit in a storm, he is with you, and that changes everything. If this video spoke to something real in you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so we can keep walking this road together. And if you haven't already, talk to him today, not tomorrow. Today, because the time we have is the only gift we can never get back. Thank you for being here. Until next time.